sorry, I'm a little late, guys. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Bill, we got you.
We can.
Yeah.
Yep. We've started streaming and recording now.
Oh, sorry. Say that again, please.
Sorry, I just wanted you to know that we've begun streaming and we're recording now.
On behalf of Dr. Edmonds, I'm pleased to call Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting to order for August 7th, 9:30 a.m. Do we need to call the roll?
Yes, I will.
Present. I can barely hear you.
Robert Ash. Jim Dorfman.
I am here.
Roderick Edmond. William Floyd. William Floyd. Roderick Fyson.
Present.
Ryan Glover. Jerry Griffin. Frida Hardage.
Present.
Alicia Ivy. She's here. She's on the phone. She's trying to log in. Russell McMurray.
Present.
Don Pond.
Present.
Rita Scott.
Present.
Christopher Tomlinson.
Hey, Rita Scott is on.
Yes. Thomas Worthy.
Present.
Mr. Chair, there is 11 board members participating.
Mr. Were
All
you
right,
able
thank
to
you.
hear me at present?
Yes, I did. You're welcome.
Read. All right. First order is the approval of the minutes of the July 30th, 2020 Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion for adoption of those minutes?
I move. Frida Hardage.
Jim Durrett will second.
Motion, I heard second. Are there any additions or corrections to these minutes? Hearing none, are there any abstentions from the?
Ms. Ivy, did you get in?
I'm sorry.
Hello?
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Are there any abstentions or to this approval of the minutes? Are there any negative votes to the approval of the minutes? If not, the minutes stand adopted as presented. Item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of traction power substation system replacement program, P 46666. And Marcia Bohr, Assistant General Manager for Capital Programs Delivery, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor Floyd, board members, Mr. Parker. I'm with you this morning, as Mayor Floyd indicated, to request your approval for the procurement of necessary services for our traction power substation replacement program. As you probably know, we have two different kinds of power systems. We have our traction power, which is for running our trains, and auxiliary power, which is for everything else. We have done an assessment of all of our traction power substation equipment and prioritized the need for replacement of that equipment. Thank you, Kirk. If we can go to the next slide, please. Based on the assessment that was conducted last year, The 5 most essential places to begin our replacement program are listed on the slide in front of you. The locations were selected because the equipment has reached end of life, and it's very important that we ensure continuous service for our patrons. If we could go to the next slide, please. So traction power substations are very specialized, they are made up of very specialized equipment. And so it is critically important that we ensure that we have highly qualified contractors performing these services. On that basis, of course, cost is always a consideration, but on the basis of making sure that we have very highly qualified and experienced contractors, we have selected to use an RFP process, which will allow us to look at both qualifications and bid prices when we make our final selection. We are planning to hold an Industry Day event. It will be virtual so that we can share the information as we normally would in an event in the atrium to encourage the qualified contractors to participate in this process. We will ensure that the contractor or contractors selected have the necessary qualifications and, of course, fair pricing for the authority. Next slide, please. So on that basis, we are requesting the board's approval of the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of traction power substation system replacement program, RFP 46666. Thank you very much.
I'll move approval of the resolution. Jim Durrett.
Alpine, second.
I hear motion and I heard a second. Any discussion, any questions for Marcia or discussion on this item? What, do you have an estimate on the size of project this is?
So yeah, this is a very large project. Oh, yeah, over the lifetime of the entire program, it will be about a $90 million program. Right now, based on our projection of available revenues, we're anticipating it being a 12-year program. If the financial picture changes, we have the ability to compress that or to extend it, but our preference would be to not extend it beyond the 12 years, but to compress it if additional funds are available. But we will be doing this program in multiple waves. So this wave will be up to a 5-year program.
And when do you expect to bring this back to the board, a recommended contractor and contract back to the board?
Assuming that we get approval from the board next month, I would anticipate that by the end of the year we would have completed the process and be ready to come back to you with a recommendation.
Okay. Any other questions for Marcia? Any abstentions for the vote on the resolution of adoption? Are there any no votes on the resolution for the adoption? I hear none. It passes. Good luck with it, Marcia. With the board.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And you're me back at agenda one more time, Marie. I'm sorry. There we go. Item 3 is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for the purchase of additional licenses for Oracle Primavera P6 Cloud Service, Primavera Uniflyer Cloud Service, and Professional Consulting Services, RFP P43333. And Marcia, you have the floor again.
Thank you very much, Mayor Floyd. So, yes, Kirk, if you'll bring up the presentation, please.
Yes, just a moment.
All righty. So we've been having a lot of thank you very much. If you can go to the next slide, please. This graphic should look particularly familiar to you all. Mr. Rucker, I think, did a great job walking you through our new governance process. And as you can see, just from the flow through the process, through the governance process, there are a lot of business processes and procedures that are going to need to be followed to ensure that we adhere to the governance process. If you go to the next slide, please. So we have adopted the governance process, that box number 2, and are in the process of developing the processes and procedures that will support that governance process. Some are in place and some are yet to be developed or finalized. But they all need to be incorporated into a business flow that allows us to ensure not only are we doing all the appropriate steps in the process, but we have a lot of consistency. So independent of who is doing that step, we have predictable procedures and outcomes. We have started training for some of the staff, and we'll be doing that on an ongoing basis. In order to be able to support all of these processes and procedures, we have initiated a tool called Unifier, and I believe you've heard a good bit about that. But that tool is the foundation for administering all of these processes and procedures. If we could go to the next slide, please. So in 2018, the board approved a contract that included the Primavera Unifier and Analytics, as well as P6 scheduling. The scheduling component was ready to be utilized fully across all of the necessary users in the authority. So all of the licenses were obtained and are now in full use by a wide variety of staff members in the authority. At the 2018 stage, we knew that there was a lot of programming to be done to get Unifier and Analytics ready for broad use. So only a portion of the licenses were acquired at that time to allow for all that development work to happen. Much of that development work is now done, and it is time for us to prepare to launch this to the broad audience throughout the authority. So at this time, our request is for the acquisition of the additional licenses that are necessary, as well as some consulting services to finish out the programming to allow the tool to be used more broadly. And if you could go to the next slide, I'd like to show you just a couple of quick examples. So one of the pages on the Unifier tool is information analytics specific to every capital project that we have. So it's not intended for you to study every detail, but just to get a broad understanding that this page is populated by data that comes from Oracle and various other systems that we're running here at MARTA. And each of these boxes is clickable so that you can drill down and get additional detail on any item within the project scope. It tells us how much we're spending on consulting services, on MARTA staff, and on construction, among other things. If we could go to the next slide, please. One of the other dashboards that we have is a representation of the 10-year forecasted fiscal budgets. The different colors represent the different asset classes. So you have facilities, you have rail, you have bus, et cetera. And so again, each one of these bars is clickable. Below it, you can see that there's a table, and that's a listing of the current fiscal year budget and the projected 10-year forecast. If you click on any particular bar, it will reduce that table below to just that year and that asset class. So you can drill down further and look at what dollars are being allocated or projected. If we could go to the next slide, please. And then we have some additional business analytics that you can see where we're able to look at charges that are made against each of the capital projects. And by category, we'll be able to look at each month. We'll be able to see trends and do a wide variety of analyses to ensure that projects are staying on schedule, on budget, and proceeding to successful conclusions. And so, and you can go to the next slide, please. And so, in order to ensure that we're able to have this tool fully utilized throughout the authority by all the users who need access to this information, we have come to the board to ask for an amendment to or modification to the initial contract. That was in the amount of $1,486,206.50. We are asking for an additional budget of $807,108.58. And for that, we will obtain 150 additional unifier licenses, 150 additional analytics licenses, access for those 150 users to cloud services, and the supporting consulting services to get all of this programming completed and made available, including some training modules for the authority staff. And that is my request. Thank you very much.
I'll move approval of the resolution. This is Jim Durrett.
Second, Al.
For approval. You're the second, Al. Thank you, Marcia. Good job. And these are annual licenses, is that correct?
There are annual fees associated with this, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there any questions or about this or comments?
I have one question, and maybe a Kirk Talbot question, but will this software and consulting, would you apply this or be able to apply this for other aspects of running the MARTA system, the operations? Does it have other applications beyond capital projects is the question.
Marcia, would you like me to take that?
Sure, yeah.
So what the unifier platform does is it allows us to sync up the general ledger, the financial system, with the project management system, keep them in sync so that they're aware of each other. So as we utilize the project management platform Primavera, any projects that are run through that, whether they're MARTA, more MARTA or other projects, they'll benefit from this. So there is potential there, yes, as we utilize the Primavera platform more.
Albert, speak. That's correct.
This is Roberta. I had a question along the line about the annual fees for the licenses. Will there be? Is there included in the original amount that you just gave us? And how much will it be annually thereafter?
So there are annual fees, and I apologize, I don't have the total annual license fee amount handy. I will have that before the board meeting, and I will send it out to you following this meeting. But we typically handle those through our operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, I may make one comment.
Any other questions?
Oh, Mayor Floyd?
Yes.
Frank
Yes,
Ruffy.
Frank.
Just a bit of clarity on what we're requesting. The licenses that are requested are actually for a 3-year term, is what I've been told. So the $807,000 is for these licenses for 3 years. So if you want to look at the annual, cost, is basically this number divided by, for the most part, 3. All right. So these are 3-year licenses that we are buying.
All right. You're correct, and it would be less because a portion of these dollars are for consulting services, so that would not be an ongoing cost.
Right.
Other questions or comments?
Can we afford the 58 cents?
Get it out of the coffee fund. Any other comments or questions for Marcia or Frank or Kurt? All right, hearing none, we'll take a vote. Are there any abstentions to vote on this resolution? Are there any negative votes on this resolution? I hear none. Therefore, the motion is adopted. The board at the next meeting, and I do remember the last item, which is other matters. Are there anything else to come before this board, this committee this morning? Adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bill?
You next.
I don't think so.
I think you should just adjourn the meeting, Bill, if there's no other matters.
I thought he did.
Weird.
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry.
Oh, may not have accepted it. I made the proclamation.
Okay.
I'll accept it, Bill.
So is the business management committee
not
next?
sure who-
I thought
I
what
know.
else is before us?
The next committee is operations and safety.
Okay.
Thank you.
Getting it set up.
Operation safety is next. All right.
What are they calling
Hello?
her in?
This is Marie. Miss Ivy is having some technical issues, and we're trying to address that. Thank you.
If Miss Ivy's not on, I'm happy to start this until she can get in, and then that'll keep us moving.
Go ahead, please.
Pardon me?
Give us
Go
30
ahead,
seconds.
Madam Chair.
Okay, if you can get a little bit closer to a speaker, Marie, you're kind of difficult to understand. And Kurt, can you put the agenda back up for us, please?
Just a moment. I can either call Miss Ivy in or give it an agenda.
Oh, well, if you're calling her in and she can get in, fine. We just didn't want to slow down the process here.
I think we can if you could give me about 30 seconds. Home or mobile? Mobile, okay. Oh, thank you. Why would it do that? Are you able to hear us now? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good morning, committee member. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
We
hear
can.
you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I could hear everyone else earlier today, but no one could hear me. I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the Operations and Safety Committee meeting for the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, August the 27th, 2020. Ms. Peters, could you please call the roll, please?
Sure, thank you. Roberta Abdul Salam,
Present.
Robert Ash, Jim Durrett,
Here.
Roderick Edmond, William Floyd,
Present.
William, Roderick Fyerson, Ryan Glover, Jerry Griffin, Frida Hardage,
Present.
Alicia Ivy,
Present.
Russell McMurray, Al Khan, Russell McMurray,
I'm present.
thank you.
Present.
Al Khan,
Al, you're muted.
Rita
Al is
Scott,
present but muted.
thank you. Rita Scott,
Present.
thank you. Christopher Tomlinson,
Present.
Thomas Worthy, Thomas Worthy, Madam Chair, there is 10 members on present.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peters. First, I would like to approve the minutes of the July 30th, 2020 Operations and Safety Committee meeting. Do I have an approval?
I move approval, Frida Hardage.
Jim Durrett will
Is
second.
there a second?
Jim
Thank
Durrett.
you.
Mhm.
The motion carries. The second item on the agenda is resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of bus midlife overhaul part kits, B44897. Mr. William Taylor, Director of Bus Maintenance. Mr. Taylor?
Excuse me, I think we need to take a vote on the meetings. This is Liz O'Neill.
Oh, I apologize. Yes. Yes, I'd like to take a vote, please, to start this meeting.
No.
And to, I'm sorry,
Approve the
sorry, but to
minutes.
approve the minutes, there was a motion and a second, but not an actual call for approval or vote on the approval.
Okay, okay. Is there an approval for the minutes of the meeting to be approved?
I think if we just ask if there are any no votes that or abstentions, that would take care of it.
Sure. Are there any abstentions, or are there any anyone who has any indifference with having the motion to be approved for the minutes of the meeting? Hearing none, we'll carry forth. Is that
Thank you.
fine, Ms. O'Neill?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is resolution authorizing the award of a contract of the procurement for bus midlife overhaul part kits, B44897. William Taylor, Director of Bus Maintenance. Mr. Taylor?
Good morning, Ms. Ivy, Mr. Parker, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 2, requesting resolution authorizing award of a contract for procurement of bus midlife overhaul part kits, B44897. The requested resolution authorizes the general manager and CEO or his delegate to enter into a contract for procurement of bus midlife parts kits with the Aftermarket Parts Company, LLC. This is a new firm fixed unit price contract for 3 years that will be funded with 37% grant funds and 63% local capital funds from the approved fiscal year 2021 budget. And funds for subsequent years will be included in subsequent budgets. This parts kit is crucial to our midlife program. The midlife program is used to restore a bus to a like-new condition once it reaches half of its useful life of 500,000 miles or 12 years. This will restore a bus to a like-new condition, maintaining the vehicle and our fleet in a state of good repair. This contract will provide parts kits that will be replacing parts that have reached useful life as well, or at high risk of failure. We have a 282 New Flyer CNG buses that will require midlife. There are up to 170 parts in this kit. We gain efficiency by having kits delivered ready for installation and assembly. The kits free up material stores labor hours, and those labor hours can now be reallocated to other tasks. Replacement parts, as mentioned, will be OEM or original equipment manufactured. This will ensure that we have the most reliable parts and that we are efficient with the reassembly of the vehicle. The Aftermarket Parts Company, LLC, operates as New Fly Industry Parts, a subsidiary of New Fly Industry Group Incorporated. Notices of invitation for bids was advertised in AJC, the Georgia Procurement Registry, the Georgia Local Government Access Marketplace, and MARTA's website. 23 firms retrieved the online solicitation and or purchased a CD. The Aftermarket Parts Company submitted the only bid in the amount of $5,951,000. And it was determined to be responsive, and they were determined to be responsive and a responsible bidder. Although the price was determined to be fair and reasonable based on our independent cost estimate, our audit department saved us $404,448 after negotiations with the Aftermarket Parts Company. 6 firms did not respond to the survey request as to why they didn't bid on the contract. 5 firms were unable to perform the work, and others, for various reasons, did not submit a bid. We contacted other agencies to find out how they source their midlife parts. SEPTA, San Francisco, and that is San Francisco MTA, and Houston sourced their midlife program out. We did identify one agency that performs their midlife in-house, and that was WMATA in DC. Unfortunately, they received only one bid as well for their parts kits for their New Flyer fleet, and that bidder was the Aftermarket Parts Company. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion did not assign a DBE goal for this procurement. They could not identify any companies certified as a DBE entity that would provide these parts kits. Are there any questions concerning the parts kits?
I'll move approval of the resolution. Jim Durrett.
I move for
Thank you very much.
second Alpine.
Is there
All
any
right,
on
well-
readiness?
Yes, I had a question. This is Roberta.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Roberta Upsall.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes, ma'am.
tell me again what the amount of was for the grants and for the other funding.
Okay, so the grant award is about 37%, and that's on $2,052,224. And the local capital funds, that puts us right at about $3.5 million.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking, because looking at the documentation we received, it says that it's 43% grant funds and 57% local. Just want to make sure we get the right information.
10-4. Let me take a quick peek here.
I'm looking under financial consideration.
And I'm looking at the latest agenda report, I believe, in EMAS, and it lines up with the 37% and 63%.
Yeah, I recognize sometimes that there are updates and they might be slow getting to us, so I just want to make sure. And can you
Okay.
tell me where the grant funds come from? What type of grants are these?
I believe this one will be the 5339. I will have to confirm that with our grants department.
Okay.
But oftentimes we take advantage of 5339 funds, but I will have to certainly confirm that.
No,
This is Jeff Parker. I believe these are all formula grant funds that we receive. This funding source is, I don't believe, a discretionary grant program.
Okay.
So I believe William's correct.
Just want to get a better understanding. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or discussion from any other board colleagues regarding this matter?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I do have one other question. I forgot.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
Life pretty much the only company that can supply these types of parts? I heard you say, well, MARTA was the only received them as a bidder as well. Are they pretty much the only ones that do this?
No, ma'am, they are not the only one. Being that this is a new flyer fleet of buses, a portion of the parts are new flyer in the kit, and oftentimes, like one vendor stated to us that they just don't want to compete with the manufacturer.
Understood.
So there are others that can do it, but they just decided not to compete.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Are there any other motions or apologies? Are there any other questions concerning this particular matter for Mr. Taylor? Otherwise, is there any unreadiness? I'd like to move for a board approval to move this resolution forward.
Well, at this time,
Alicia, you have an approval and a second, so you just need to see if there's any abstentions or anyone that votes
Are
no.
there? Thank you, Ms. Hardage. Is there any abstentions? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Item number 3.
Are there any
briefing,
no's?
zero.
You have to ask if there's any no's also.
Are there any no's?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move to item 3, briefing, zero emission buses. Mr. Colley Greenwood, thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, Ms. Ivy, Mr. Parker, and members of the committee. This is really an opportunity for me to preface the request for resolution that's coming up in item number 4. We wanted to start off with a general overview of the electric bus concept as it applies to us here at MARTA. The idea, of course, on the next slide, William.
Okay.
The idea, of course, is supports MARTA's vision of insofar as taking people where they want to go today and tomorrow, because this is an intentional look forwards towards the future of mass transit. And as we'll see in a moment, it fits well within our vision of advocating for a more livable region and our priorities of strengthening the MARTA brand and demonstrating fiscal responsibility. As the industry turns, with good reason, to zero emission buses, we too at MARTA will assess how best to achieve the benefits available within that technology. MARTA, as you know, is not new to environmental sustainability. We already have a good, strong program with greenhouse gas emission inventory, a commitment towards environmentally friendly buses. In fact, our entire fleet is currently using strictly clean fuel technology. Our CNG buses already reduce carbon monoxide emissions by 95% over our clean diesel. And we have 370 CNG vehicles out there and approximately 164 clean diesel. But MARTA is continuing in the fight for environmental sustainability. Our program also includes recycling, water filling stations, water reclamation, even motion sensor light switches. But by adding zero emission buses to the program, MARTA will signal to our community that we are taking steps to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions produced by our bus fleet. Despite some obvious benefits, this addition would come with its fair share of challenges, which I'll outline in a couple of slides from now. But we are convinced as a leadership team that we need to review those pros and cons. As partners in the National Transit Strategy, MARTA's departments, capital programs, planning, safety, operations, we're all driven towards being a world-class transit agency, and that means remaining aware of the best practices in the industry and checking for suitability of application here at home, thereby making the case for a closer look at the concept of battery electric buses here at MARTA. Can I get to the next slide, Mr. Taylor? Yeah, thank you. You may recall in 2017, we had a limited pilot program. We took an initial look at the concept in 2017 when the 3 largest manufacturers of battery electric buses at the time participated in a 2-week review of the technology across 7 routes in service. This was a minor introduction, if you will, without any committed infrastructure. In fact, we had charging stations mounted on flatbed trucks, and we were using low-range vehicles in the area of 100, 125 miles full range. There wasn't much conclusive evidence at the time, but it was enough for MARTA to apply to the FTA for funding to support a proper pilot program, and so we did that. The application for grant was denied in 2018 for 19, but an opportunity now exists in 2019 for 20 for a no-emission, low-emission bus grant. And it's an opportunity that Larry and William will describe in greater detail to you later on. Challenges up front, if I can get the next slide. Thank you. Up front, the concept will be challenging, and scaling up for any substantial onboarding of electric buses will require significant investment in power, relinquishing of valued space at our existing facilities, and some invasive brownfield construction as development takes place while we're trying to run a safe and efficient transit operation. Of course, one of the biggest challenges lies in simply not knowing what we don't know. But on the bright side, most properties transitioning to battery electric buses these days lack the resident experience that MARTA already has when it comes to high voltage systems and high power infrastructure owing to our heavy rail program. And furthermore, because our bus network ties into so many heavy rail stations, we have a relatively unique opportunity to install overhead charging at stations that can offer long layovers, available real estate, and substations with capacity for high power overhead charging, not to mention significantly lower electricity rates, among the least expensive anywhere in the country. So going to the next slide, which is benefits, of course, it's benefits that attract us. When you look at that first bullet with reduced emissions, you can tell that, you know, improved air quality means an improvement in health and wellness for our local region. It's something that our partners like Georgia's Clean Air Force, Clean Cities Georgia, and Environment Georgia, as well as our medical community, can all get behind and support. If you look at the top chart, it shows a well-to-wheel life cycle. It takes that into account for battery electric bus, which includes plant requirement for generation of electricity. Frankly, if you were only looking at tailpipe emissions, the chart for a battery electric bus would be an absolute 0, which is infinitely better than any of the numbers the other propulsion systems could provide. But taking well-to-wheel into account, taking the impact on the environment that the plant generation takes into account, you can still see that battery electric buses are well below CO2 emissions produced by the other propulsion systems. The lower chart compares fuel economy for CNG buses versus electric buses. And while the lower the better in the upper chart, it's the higher the better in the lower chart. And you can see that battery electric buses is at least 3 times higher than CNG when it comes to fuel economy. And this information comes from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Is it quieter? If I can get you to go to the next slide for a second, Mr. Taylor, we can say that we can confirm that it is quieter. When you take a look at the chart on the left, it's talking about exterior noise. And again, in blue is the electric bus, and all others are in the other colors. And you can look at CNG, you can look at diesel, and in both cases on the exterior, whether it's the curbside or the street side, electric bus maintains its 66 decibel rating, while the others fluctuate at a much higher rate between 74 and 68 for CNG and diesel respectively, to even higher, 75 and 71 for CNG and diesel respectively. The reason for the fluctuation there on the exterior is because those other technologies have emission systems and coolant fan noise coming out on the street side as opposed to the curb side. Nonetheless, by far and away, the electric bus is quieter on the outside. And on the inside, the chart on the right, again, you'll see that the electric bus in blue is, it's similar to diesel at the driver's location and better than the other technologies. But then all the other technologies throughout the balance of the bus will disappoint and make it more difficult for the customers than does the electric bus. And those of you that remember, in late January of this year, we had a board tour where in the morning, we tried to do some onboard communication and presentations while we were driving in a diesel bus. And in the afternoon, we did some more onboard presentations while we were driving in a battery electric bus, and it was decidedly quieter in the afternoon when we were using that battery electric bus. So that 6 decibel difference between 72 for the diesel and 66 for the battery electric, it actually makes a big difference. If we can go back to the benefits chart, thank you. Fewer moving parts means less components to break. It improves our MDBF, our mean distance between failures. It means reduced repair costs, parts and labor dollars. It means less inventory and storage and associated warehouse space and administration. In a few short years, battery range has increased from, as I say, 100 miles to 225 miles on a full single charge. And the reliability of batteries, chargers, and components has improved as well. You can't ignore the benefit of a diversified pool of fuel dependencies, of course. MARTA has seen past examples of refinery and production shutdowns and pipeline ruptures in the Gulf or the Middle East, and even local refueling equipment defects, each of which have had a negative effect on our diesel and CNG operations. But a diversified fleet means better ability to provide core service regardless of unplanned disruption. In terms of lower operating costs, we'll just flip to the next slide. Thank you. On the merits of annual fuel cost alone, the battery electric bus will outperform CNG when we're able to take full advantage of our existing rail infrastructure. Until then, bus facility charging reliance means that annual cost will be double that of a CNG bus, but less than half that of a clean diesel. The estimated annual fuel savings of replacing a diesel bus with an electric bus is approximately $14,000 per vehicle per year. The next slide asks the question if battery electric buses are safe. The next slide, please. William, if I can get the next slide showing up for safety of battery electric buses. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So in addition to these 6 points that you see here, which are self-explanatory in terms of safety, I think it's worth noting that the battery energy storage system is replete with redundant safety measures, such as direct liquid cool technology for optimal temperature control, constant monitoring of cell voltage and temperature, automatic load disconnects in the event of any abnormality detected. They've got a robust testing system and validation process, and we're also getting the AMREX fire detection and suppression system, which includes placement of various modules to detect and suppress any abnormal thermal activity. Even the cell pairs are separated by insulated pads, and as we can go to the next slide with the anatomy of the bus, you can see them mounted on the roof. So they're there on top with the en route rapid charger next to the batteries and the energy storage system. Other electrified components include the electric power steering unit down at the front, the traction motor behind the rear wheel, electric heaters in the rear, with the air compressor system, and of course the shop plug-in charging ports on either side for more convenience and flexibility when it comes to charging. Better to have it on both sides. But this is a classic example of less is more, and it's what this bus doesn't have that really makes it attractive. The diesel engine is not there. You'll notice there's no CNG engine. There's no moving parts, the weight, the fluids, the gases, the diesel fuel, the oil. There's no transmission and associated weight and gallons of transmission fluid. The requisite fluid usage and disposal costs, fluid leaks, environmental mitigation costs, mechanical and belt drives and all those moving parts, and the human capital involved in maintaining all of these things. So the full cost allocation of these items has yet to be determined, but would form a major part of the analysis afforded by a proper pilot program. We can go on to the next slide talking about charger requirements. The other key component is the charging system. And our electric bus charging system would use the latest technology that Siemens has to offer with their chargers. It has Wi-Fi routers allowing us to remotely capture charger performance and service data, such as energy consumption. On the left, you'll see the en route opportunity charger. It's a 450 kilowatt charger. It's spec'd to charge our long-range bus battery packs for anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes, as long as we bring that bus into charge at 50% SOC or 50% state of charge, meaning if our bus is at least half charged and we put it on to one of these opportunity chargers, it's only going to take 8 to 12 minutes to achieve full range, full charge. And that's very significant, good numbers. With many rail transit stations, the future electric bus service has many options here at MARTA, installing opportunity chargers at these high voltage facilities, again, with very low electricity rates. It's not all rosy, and there are some cons to opportunity chargers. They are costly, they are relatively fixed, and very costly to relocate. They may require dedicated or restricted access and egress space. They may require a change to our bus service schedule to optimally charge vehicles while in service, and they would require more capital expense and maintenance than the depot chargers. Not to mention the cost. They are anywhere from $600,000 to $900,000 for an opportunity charger, whereas the depot charger on the right costs between $260,000 and $300,000. Those depot chargers, they are 150 kilowatt, and they'll charge our buses in 3 to 4 hours at 50% state of charge. So that would take advantage of the overnight opportunities while the buses are not in service. They allow us to take advantage of the lower off-peak electricity rates, and they're very flexible for route selection and changes. They're more maintenance friendly, and as I said, they're less expensive. But of course, it's a longer charge time, and the bus would be removed from service, and requiring that number of remote dispensers and these kinds of depot chargers would be scalability would become a challenge, and would require a lot of thought in preparing how to do that. Beyond all this, there's a collective lack of experience in the industry. So these fleet transition risks are real. Yep, thank you. Collectively, we have yet to experience battery electric buses at the end of useful life stage. So we have no concrete answers about life cycle risks for the later stages of the technology. We do have questions. Questions like long-term reliability of the buses, the longevity of the batteries, what is the full capital costing likely to be, how about stability of the electrical grid, and you know, finding good qualified technicians is already challenging in today's market for bus mechanics. Turning them into these niche technicians with the training required for battery electric makes it even more difficult to replace this highly skilled talent. So we'll have that to consider. And of course, collisions and the cleanup of lithium-ion batteries and the effect of operating with battery mount in a heavily canopied environment, all of these things need to be, you know, properly considered. And a pilot program will afford us that chance to gather stable, local data through the life cycle of these buses and address these questions as the fleet ages and as mileage increases. To the next slide, we'll talk about the other agencies. There are agencies throughout the USA that are gaining experience with these unknown elements. MARTA is anticipating being a part of that high technology learning experience. Several of these agencies, including UGA and Macon-Bibb County Transit Authority, we're committed well ahead of our planned strategic approach. Our approach is one that leverages a variety of experience and the lessons learned in a coordinated, supported study of battery electric bus technology. You can see over on the left side of the map where California is there's about 14 areas, 14 agencies in the state of California. They have adopted legislation already requiring these agencies to transition to 100% zero emission buses by 2040. May seem like a long time, but when you're planning all the things that go into this launch, it's not. So the rush is on in California to figure out grid reliability, real estate for charging stations, planning and scheduling for opportunity chargers, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, MARTA intends to proactively figure these things out in lieu of any external pressures to do so. And so we've been involved with the Transit Vehicle Innovation Deployment Center, or TVIDC for short. It's an advisory panel led by a nonprofit consortium, and they're tracking more than 650 zero-emission buses in operation across the country, and so many more in various stages of procurement. This group is comprised of several CEOs, including our own Mr. Parker, and manufacturers and universities and other industry stakeholders. So we think that learning together is the best approach to this type of pilot. So before we go to the next slide, I want you to notice that California, over in the top 5 agencies in quantity, there's LA County Metro, Long Beach Transit, Regional Transit District, Foothill Transit, and AC Transit. So California has got 4 of the 5 top 5 agencies in terms of the number of pilots going on. But also interesting to note, as I turn the page to pilot program partners, is that in each of the, next slide please, is that in each of the cases that California is involved with, CTE, which is the Center for Transportation and the Environment, is involved. So they're deeply involved with most of the agencies with the high saturation of battery electric buses. And as it happens, they're the lead consultants in the consortium that we're working with. So they're one of the top consultants in the battery electric bus transit industry, and they're deeply engaged in the work as I say it. And Larry will speak a lot more about CTE when he's up in a moment. New Flyer, we all know New Flyer is a leader in the manufacture of battery electric buses, and they're an established member of the funded pilot program that William will speak to next. And Siemens, considered a top manufacturer for electric drive motors and battery chargers. And of course, we've got our very own Georgia Power with lots of experience installing electric vehicle charging stations. So we feel that working together is our best opportunity for leveraging the learning, the experience, and the challenges, and the lessons learned throughout the country as MARTA takes a step forward. So to say more about CTE, next slide. To say more about CTE, I'd like to ask Larry Prescott, the AGM of Infrastructure, to speak to you about the pilot program.
Colleague, could I just, this is Jeff Parker. I just want to, before Larry speaks, and I apologize, Larry, for jumping in here. Colleague just gave a really, really detailed overview of what's a very, very important topic for us. This is where the transit industry is going. There is no doubt about that. The clusters that Colleague just showed in California are largely around the fact that that the legislators have required a transition. Our friend Phil Washington in LA, his mayor has doubled down and moved up his deadline to 2030 to 2040. They are, I believe, the second largest owner of buses in the country behind the transit agencies in New York. Chicago has a political mandate as well. We do live in a part of the country where there's not as significant political pressure to move towards zero emission buses. We do have a county commissioner from one of our jurisdictions who does have a platform about zero emission buses. I think that we need to recognize that this is going to become more and more of an issue locally and nationally. And, you know, I just draw the attention that we are being very thoughtful. We are working with our peers in the industry to understand this transition. And the industry is really at perfecting a pilot program right now. And the industry, including myself, is very worried about scaling pilot programs up significantly to hundreds and hundreds of buses, which will be done across the country. Now, you know, the other side of this is this will be a significant investment that we will have to, you know, figure out how we prioritize and fit things like this into our capital program. Although I expect that more and more the federal government is going to become an investor in transition to zero emission buses. So just wanted to draw your attention into the importance of this pilot program and where we're going from here. And we will continue to bring you updated on where we are with this initiative. So thank you, Kali, and I guess Larry, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Thank Yeah, after Larry speaks, William Taylor will get more into details in terms of costing and the balance of the pilot program. So over to you, Larry. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question before we go too much further?
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Please
Yes,
go ahead.
thank you, Kali. A very interesting presentation. I wanted to just ask you what has changed in the development of the systems for the electric buses. I remember about 3 years ago at one of the bus demonstrations in Texas, you know, asking about the longevity and how much distance they could get on the power. And that was one of the concerns. So has there been significant improvement in that? And if so, do you know exactly what that is?
Yeah, so the range that the electric buses were able to achieve back in 2017 was about 100 miles on a full charge, 125 miles at the most. And we're now clocking in at 225 miles of range. So that is probably the biggest improvement. Also, some of the safety features that have come about as a result of technological improvements. So that redundant cooling system that I was talking about, the direct liquid cool system, the monitoring of inside of all the combustible or thermal compartments. So all those modes that will measure temperature and actually disconnect the battery load in the event of any abnormalities. That's and also I think some of the key players. So 2017, you didn't have some of the, you know, BYD and the Proterra, some of those electric bus companies, they weren't as developed. They weren't in the fray. They are now very, very prominent in the field. And I think that kind of competition drives further technology and innovation. So the field, you know, in general is far more competitive, far more efficient, and far more productive than it was just a few short years ago.
Is there
Kali, can I just...
Is there any development on the area of hydrogen fuel cell?
Let me talk about those and that in your earlier question. The big driver is the battery industry. You know, if you think about today, how many battery operated devices there are, so there's a huge technology improvements in battery capacity, and that's a major driver. Hydrogen fuel cell buses, which is the other type of zero emission buses, a battery powered bus, and then the second is a bus that uses a hydrogen fuel cell as opposed to storing electricity in a battery. It's a chemical reaction that creates the electricity. There are advances with that. There are, when I was commissioner of Connecticut DOT, we were one of the few agencies that owned a few of those buses. it's something that we need to explore. The question that we haven't quite figured out around hydrogen fuel cells is the availability of spent hydrogen, the process to create the fuel cells. You know, when I was working on this in Connecticut, we had a pretty robust defense group and a senator who was trying to make sure that that defense industry was you know, thriving, and so there was a push to some of the benefits of hydrogen and using that. So that's an area that's much less developed than the battery electric buses, but it is something that we do need to explore to see if that's a potential, you know, a potential solution for where we go with zero emission buses.
Yeah, I was speaking specifically of the hydrogen fuel cell electric buses.
Right. That's all hydrogen fuel cells are in effect electric buses. It's an electric bus as opposed to having a battery that stores the electricity. It's a fuel cell that creates a chemical reaction that produces the electricity.
Right. I understand that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
All right. Moving on. What is CTE? The Center for Transportation Environment. They're a member-supported nonprofit advocate for the environment through transportation. This program is what they do. They've worked on over 200 relative transit projects worth over $500 million, and they have and are currently working on deployment of over 300 e-buses nationally while working with over 70 agencies. Best of all, they are headquartered here in Atlanta. They are part of the reason why we're here today. They orchestrated the partnership Kali described previously, and they've been a key advocate for the grant pursuits in getting that grant. Moving on to the scope. Next slide. This is a new technology, and we need their specific knowledge and experience to supplement our in-house expertise. They will be following the two-phase approach, but these two phases will be done simultaneously. The one on the left is supporting the bus side of the house, with the task shown there, as phase two will be supporting the infrastructure and implementation side of the house. So kind of ongoing interactive for both sides of the technology side of the house internally. And the proposed fee for this is the $420,000. So here are our maintenance sites. We have the Laredo Maintenance Facility on the left. Note the green squares there, they're kind of small on the left of the roadway. Those are the Georgia Power transformers and meters. They connect to the existing grid. And then the three blue small squares are the power cabinets that are Siemens. They connect to the 6 yellow dispensers. Those dispensers are the plug and play ones that we talked about earlier. The cabinets that we have are capacity to double in size. So the 6 gray dispensers that you see there are for future expansion. Where Hamilton is on the right side, it's heavy maintenance, and they only need 1 cabinet with 2 dispensers, and they'll have the capacity to double to 4 dispensers in the future. And note that the dispensers are similar to those used for electric cars. They're basically plug and play, and that's a huge safety improvement over CNG and diesel. We also have included generator as our backup power supply in need of emergency situations. Moving on to the routes, we have Edgewood Candler station on the left there. That's our primary opportunity charger location, and Eastlake on the right is our option location. Once CTE gets on board, we'll determine whether or not we need that or if we can use it for future expansion. The same Georgia Power Siemens units are located there, the green and the blue. And then what you see in the orange area is where the bus will park, and that overhead contact system with the pantograph is our opportunity charger. It drops down onto the bus, which is similar to the streetcar, but in reverse. And again, for safety, the system is up over the bus and far away from patrons. Similar to the streetcar as well, our EP&E group will be managing the maintenance of this because they already do it for the streetcar. So now I'll turn it back over to William to discuss the routes.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning still. Let's talk about the route. These electric buses will be assigned to Route 102. Right now, as you see on the right side, or the right diagram, we have Route 102 and Route 2. They are now interlined, which means each operator will service both routes currently. Once we modify Route 102 and go into the BRT phase of that route, we'll electrify that route from North Avenue to Edgewood Calendar Park Station. And the opportunity charger that Larry just talked about will be located there. So we'll be certainly working with planning to iron out the frequencies of charging the vehicles so that we maintain a high state of charge for that electric fleet. We also will have as an option for Route 2, we could put a overhead charger at East Lake Station, and that is a secondary location for an overhead charger. The goals of the pilot program, certainly we want to validate industry data with buses and service at our agency. We have a ton of information out there from various entities, as you've already seen in the map that Carly talked about, especially in California. And their data is pretty much in line with others in the industry. However, there's nothing like validating data on our own and for our service area. We'll also develop the PM program and the predictive maintenance program for these vehicles. We will start out with the manufacturer's recommendation, but oftentimes when you put a fleet of vehicles in service and once they start to increase in life cycle and age, things happen that causes us to change those preventive and predictive maintenance schedules. So we'll continue to work with our IT department as well, helping us define some real timely schedules in our enterprise asset management system to maintain these vehicles. We'll train our techs. Our technicians will be dealing with a different vehicle. Instead of dealing with 24 volts DC maximum, they will now be working on buses with anywhere from 600 to 800 volts AC. So with that in mind, training is really necessary for them to start dealing with these higher voltages. Our operators also have to adapt their driving techniques to know what's known as far-sighted driving. In a nutshell, that means they need to ease into the optimal speed of the vehicle to help with maintaining a good state of charge and decreasing the likelihood of battery degradation. Also, the smooth braking, recuperative braking, we need them to also learn that technique so that we could take advantage of the regenerative braking where the vehicle actually is charging the batteries when the bus is decelerating. We're going to develop KPIs for this vehicle. We certainly can't wait to take advantage of the analysis of our operational costs, being that in the industry the operational cost has proven to decrease as it relates to maintaining a fleet of electric buses. So we're certainly excited about that. We don't have to worry about the fuel costs, although electric cost is there. But Carly mentioned also during the anatomy of the bus, we don't have to worry about purchasing all the bulk fluids for this particular fleet of vehicles. So, and also the brake wear for this vehicle is much less than a bus with a reciprocating engine and transmission installed. So other than that, we're going to certainly collect data. CTE is going to play a role in that, helping us collect data that's necessary for us to really analyze this fleet of vehicles so we can make very good decisions in the future for our sustainability program utilizing zero emission buses. We'll take those lessons learned, and when we begin to scale up these vehicles into our service, we'll have more refined plans procuring and placing chargers and strategic places to maintain a high state of charge in these vehicles. So when they return back to bus facilities, we don't have to worry about long charge times. In addition to that, we're also looking at opportunity charges being installed at bus facilities based on number of buses we buy. Lastly, we have an opportunity to really brand these vehicles. When the electric buses were being piloted here back in 2017, I have to say the community, or our ridership, the Metro Atlanta area was really excited about seeing an electric bus in service. And the number one question they have for us is, when are we going to buy electric buses? So that day is here, but we have an opportunity to really take advantage of branding this vehicle, so when it does hit the street, they know we have an electric bus in service. Grant funding, Carly talked briefly about this, but surely we did put in an application for the Low Note Grant in 2018. We weren't successful, but however, in 2019, we were. Those who are most successful in applying for this grant are the ones who primarily seek zero emission buses. You could seek the diesel buses if you like, as well as CNG, but oftentimes you'll probably come up short because they're looking for the most, in most cases, they're looking for the most innovative, high technology grant applications, and electric buses or zero emission buses fit that bill. So we've already talked briefly about partnering with New Flyer and Siemens, along with Georgia Power, our local vendor, with CTE to proceed with procuring these buses. But the good thing is it didn't take us long to figure out what the budget is for that. We were awarded $2.6 million from the FTA and low note grant funds. We also took advantage of some 5339 apportionment grant funds and at the amount of $2.3 million. So our total federal funds committed to this particular project is $4.9 million. Our local match is $3.4 million, and our total grant budget is $8.4 million. This last chart here as it relates to cost, on the left identifies what the cost will be for our infrastructure. You see the on-route and depot charges priced together up top, and you got the base total of $3.4 million. Now, I understand that you may have some different numbers or values in the documents that you have. We have been working with the vendors and our partners up to the last minute, finalizing cost for this project. That's why you still see estimated there, but we're pretty much final now. When we finally got completed numbers in, the board documents had already been distributed and published. So if you see different numbers, that is why. Especially as it relates to the buses on the right side, where we are at $6.9 million total for the bus procurement. Included in that will be the training, the tools, the specialized equipment, extended warranty for the batteries, since we don't know the reliability of those quite yet. But we also have the contingency fund in place to have, with marketing in mind, to brand these buses. We certainly want to make sure we have funds there for that. So that's what the contingency fund is for as it relates to the buses. The total amount for this project, as you see, is $11.4 million.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Prescott, and also you, Mr. Taylor, for this deep dive briefing. Is there any questions or a discussion from any of the board members?
Yes, this is Rod Frierson. I had a question concerning the depot chargers. Thank you. If I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that those stations are, they are estimated a cost is between $260,000 and $300,000 a station. Is that my understanding? You mentioned that, Collie mentioned.
That's correct for the depot chargers, yes.
Okay, and so are those depot chargers, will they be dedicated to just MARTA fleets? Or is there an opportunity for other people to use those chargers for their bulk services?
No, I mean, I can ask William to speak to that in detail, but because they'll be on MARTA property at MARTA, MARTA facilities, and connections would be different for the actual vehicles than it would be for, say, a personally operated vehicle. But William, do you want to speak to any plans to share that infrastructure?
Sure. In the past, we've had reciprocating agreements with other agencies or entities where they would come in and use our fuel system. In this case, it would be our charging stations. And we just certainly have to work out a schedule where everyone will have fully charged buses when they leave. So we're not opposed to anyone coming in and sharing the charging stations. We just have to all agree to a schedule that's going to benefit all.
Sure, that's understandable.
And at 3 to 4 hours per charge or 50% state of charge, I would imagine that it'd be very difficult to start to share these this infrastructure with the size of our fleet. So scalability is definitely something that we would have to work out.
Okay, that's understandable with the time that you need to have it sitting on the charge for 2 to 3 hours. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from board members?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Al Vaughn. I've got a quick question. Going back to the partners such as Georgia Power, Collie, did I understand that these grants that these named partners couldn't participate financially?
I'm sorry, Al, that they could not participate. And actually, they're part of the group grant fund opportunity. So Georgia Power is simply a part of that consortium. I'm not sure if I understand about financially participating, though.
Just go back to what part is Georgia Power, these partners contributing financially was the question.
So to what extent is Georgia Power contributing financially? I don't have an answer for that. I'm not sure if Larry or William do. So jump in, guys, if you do.
Collie, this is Jeff. There is no direct financial contribution from these partners. What the FTA is doing in this program is that they want to make transit agencies have a mechanism to prototype and gain internal knowledge, but they also want to make sure that at an industry level that there are enough suppliers who are developing the systems that supported the buses, the charging stations. And so the FTA does require the transit agency as the grantee to identify partners here who would then be the suppliers, and money, FTA money would pass through to the to those partner entities. So it's a little different than other grants where we would be required to go through a competitive process. In this case, the FTA recognizes the need to sort of establish a marketplace for these critical systems. So that's why we have partners like Georgia Power, Siemens, and New Flyer.
Thank you.
Board colleagues, is there any other discussion regarding this item?
Yes, this is Chris Compton. but picking up on that last point, and Kali, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Jeff is correct as far as like Georgia Power not contributing financially directly, but I imagine that they are helping you look at like the Laredo and Hamilton, because they want to understand its impact on their existing infrastructure there. And so, because we've had similar discussions with them on our facility, nobody wants to overload the grid or trigger needs for a substation. So I would say they're definitely.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They've been partnering us for the past year and helping us develop the costs and the setup and the sites and all the connectivity along with Siemens and New Flyer. So we've had ongoing conversations as a team, and we do not have a contract with them at this time.
So I just wanted to point that out because obviously that costs them time, money, and expertise, and they've been an active partner with really everyone throughout the state who's looking at this. My question is, I guess, for Kali or Larry, when we talk about the getting our maintenance staff to speed on this, are you talking about both on the propulsion side, i.e., maintaining the motors that are literally turning the wheels, as well as the power side, like understanding what it's going to take to maintain either the battery systems on the bus or the charging? Because obviously there's a lot of specialized and new technology. So is it both propulsion and power?
It's both to an extent, but the larger learning curve will be on the driving side in terms of the technicians on site at our garages, given that, as I said, we have a workforce already well familiar with high power voltage systems, with the heavy rail system. So there will be some orientation required on the voltage and power infrastructure side, but I think that the larger learning curve comes in on the operations side.
Okay.
The field maintenance side will be, again, similar to what we do at streetcar, just a different configuration.
Okay, great. And my last, I guess, comment/statement. One thing we've been finding, at the state level, we funded about 25 zero-emission buses between buses in up at UGA and then some work at CAT at Savannah. One thing in the pilot that goes beyond the technical, but it's how quiet these buses are. And so there's a whole safety aspect that the industry and Jeff with the committees on, he's well aware, or people are just looking at, this bus, for lack of a better way of putting it has a higher chance of sneaking up on somebody just because of how quiet the system is. And so I'll just be interested to participate and just hear on the experience on that. Some people are considering putting literally things that emit sounds that might emulate even engine sounds or a whistle, just so the public hears this bus moving.
That's right, Chris. We've considered that, as well as there are other technologies such as pedestrian detection systems that will actually, if we detect that a pedestrian is within proximity of the vehicle, that it will emit a sound to alert the pedestrian externally that they're in the proximity of the bus. So these are absolute considerations that we have to work through as we consider rolling these buses out.
We'll be relying on CT to bring that national expertise to help us with that as well.
Well, I'm real excited about this. I definitely think it's the right thing for us as MARTA and for the industry to look at. It's the future. And this is just really comprehensive, because I think a lot of earlier initiatives underestimated the impact on the power infrastructure grid. And I know you guys are thinking about how it would scale up. So kudos, and I look forward to, as this continues to develop. Thank you.
I'm also excited. Kali, my question is, do you have experience with electric buses from up in the Toronto region?
I would say, look, just before I left, we started our launch. So we launched 60 electric buses up in Toronto, BYD, Proterra, and New Flyer. And so just as I was leaving, we're starting to actually roll those out into service. So, my contacts back there tell me that everything's still going well. And, so I would have to admit that it's a limited experience.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. This is Roberta. I wanted to also advise.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, colleague, just to mention something to you, and we can follow up offline. About 14 years ago, working with Commissioner Volmer for the state's technical and vocational schools, I wrote a proposal to add training for electric vehicles as well as the hydrogen fuel cell in terms of preparing the maintenance staff for what we predicted was going to be coming this way, not just for buses. And just in checking with that for workforce, that might be something to follow up on. And then the final thing, I would like to ask Madam Chair if we could get sent to the board the last 4 or 5 slides from Mr. Prescott and from Mr. Taylor. They're not in
Consider it done.
Yeah, no.
Yes, ma'am. Consider it done.
Thank you.
Mr. Floyd, I believe you had a question, sir.
A question for Kyle. Is this type applicable to BRT lines?
Is it applicable to different routes?
Transit line. Is this same buses fit that?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, an electric bus is absolutely a good fit for a bus rapid transit line. It requires planning so that we could have the charging systems in the right location. In terms of the type of vehicle that you use for a BRT, of course, you've got to plan that as well in terms of are you center lane running, are you curb lane running, what side of the bus are your doors going to be opening on? But that is that's a structural consideration, but the technology and the propulsion systems and all of that go into an electric bus, a gold standard BRT actually requests use of an electric vehicle. It's just that it's what's next. And so the two really do work well together.
And currently we are incorporating that into the Summerhill BRT program that we're at 30% design here shortly.
Board members, are there any other questions or discussion? Lastly, Kali, I would like to just encourage that we have a little bit more information regarding the safety components as we spoke about in our pre-meeting so that we can have that available for board members with regard to this matter. I think that it will be of value if you could provide some level of information, please. Thank you. If there is no other discussion regarding this matter, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, resolution authorizing the award of a contract of purchase for 60 emission buses. William Taylor.
Okay, good morning. This requested resolution authorizes the general manager and CEO or his delegate to enter into a contract for procurement of 60 emission buses with New Flyer of America Incorporated. This procurement is being funded with FY 2021 funds, federal funds.
William, sorry to interrupt, William. It's Collie. I think your voice is fading out. It may be the proximity of the mic.
Is that better, Colin? That better?
Yeah, he's saying that. Yes.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So this procurement is being funded with federal funds of 56%, and of course we would also chip in with our capital funds of 44%. The total amount for this particular contract is $6,944,063.04. An audit is being conducted for this particular procurement. There was no DBE goal since we are partnering with New Flyer by way of the Low-No grant. Now that everyone has had an Are there any final questions concerning the electric bus?
I'll move approval of the resolution, Jim Durrett.
Second, Roberta Abdul Salam.
Is there any unreadiness, noes, or abstentions? The motion carries. Next item on the agenda, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for consulting services for zero emission bus program letter of agreement L472373, Larry Prescott, AGM. Mr. Prescott?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to do that previous presentation. I'll direct your attention to this resolution for the letter of authorization for the CTE consulting services for the Zero Bus program. The requested resolution authorizes the general manager, CEO, or as a delegate to enter into a contract for consulting services for zero buses with the Center for Transportation and Environment. This procurement is also funded with FY21 funds with 56% local federal and 44% local capital for FY21 with a base year of 3 years for $420,000. Funds for the subsequent fiscal years will be included in the subsequent annual budgets. As discussed, the consultant will provide consultant services for the two-phase program. And this is a new contract, which is a fixed firm unit price contract for a contract of 3 years. The Department of Internal Audit is currently conducting the price analysis to determine its fair, reasonable pricing. The FTA, low or no emissions approved grant, lists the consultant CTE as a partner of MARTA. Therefore, the MARTA Offices of Infrastructure and Bus Operations recommends awarding the letter of agreement for consulting services to the consultant. Thank you. And any questions?
If there are no questions,
I'll
is
move
there any
approval.
unready?
I'll second the motion to approve. This is Robbie.
Is there any unreadiness, noes, or abstentions? The motion carries. The next resolution on the agenda, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for procurement of pest control services for MARTA vehicles, B45467, Sean Thomas.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. Parker, Operations and Safety Committee members and board members. If I may, I would like to bring your attention to agenda item number 6 for the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of pest control services for MARTA vehicles. This contract will support 2 of the authority's strategic initiatives. First and foremost, improving the customer experience, and second, promoting MARTA's image and brand. Next slide, please. The intent of this contract agreement is to address various health and sanitary concerns created by the presence of pests traveling on MARTA revenue vehicles. Many of these pests are problematic for our industry as well as our region of the country. The authority has previously pursued a variety of corrective actions using internal staff to supplement service agreements for pest control services. This reactive approach led to concerns with improper chemical usage, removal of chemical residue, and inconsistent application methods. Next slide. Some noted improvements within this contract agreement include this web portal, which you can see a screenshot of to the right. And within this portal, we'll be able to track trends with pest infestations by pest type, by vehicle type, by location. It also includes a tab that for the safety data sheet information, which will show the chemicals being used on our vehicles. And also, it includes extended treatment areas outside of the passenger cabins of our vehicles into the various crevices of each of the vehicle types, as well as retreat retreatment at no cost within 72 hours of notification. Next slide. This agreement includes revenue vehicles in the following estimated quantities: 594 buses, 211 mobility vans, 312 rail cars, and 4 street cars. The service frequencies, I'm sorry, next slide. The service frequencies within the scope of the contract are on a quarterly basis for the buses, trains, and streetcars, and on a semi-annual basis for the mobility vans. However, it should be noted that the mobility vehicles remain in this agreement as a supplement to services provided within a separate contract agreement. This contract agreement also includes provisions for a specified number of emergency treatment services for unforeseen circumstances. Next slide. The solicitation was advertised on March 10th, and 26 firms retrieved the online solicitation. The deadline for bid submission was eventually established as May 26th. And I say eventually because, of course, the pandemic occurred right in the middle of those 2 dates. The authority received 2 bids prior to the bid deadline. However, the lowest responsive and responsible bid was received from Terminex International. Next slide, please. The bid received from Terminex International was for $297,448.00, and that was for a 2-year base with 2 one-year options. There was a DBE goal of 16% that was established for this contract, and Terminex has identified a subcontractor, which is noted in the bid documents. Next slide.
Thank you.
The bid was evaluated by internal audit and was determined to be low risk as the pricing is considered to be fair and reasonable, and the firm was also determined to be financially capable of performing the work specified. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. I'd like to get a motion for approval for the resolution authorizing the award for a contract for procurement of pest control services for MARTA vehicles, B45467.
This is Robbie Ash. I move approval.
Frida Hardage seconds.
Is there any unreadiness, noes, or abstentions? The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is other matters. A, FY 2020 June Key Performance Indicators. This is for information only. Is there someone that's going to present this?
It's just attached for us to review at our own time.
Okay, for information only?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not looking at the screen. I apologize. Is there any other matters that will become before the Operations and Safety Committee meeting today? Thank you so much. Hearing none, I would like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ivy.
Thank you. All right, can we bring up the Business Management Committee meeting agenda? Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a Business Management Committee meeting. First item we need to deal with is, can I get Mrs. Peters to please call the roll?
Thank you, sir. Roberta Abdul Salam.
Present.
Robert Ash.
Present.
Jim Durrett.
Present.
Roderick Edmond. William Floyd. William Floyd. Roderick Fyerson.
Present.
Ryan Glover. Jerry Griffin. Frida Hardage.
Present.
Alicia Ivy.
Present.
Russell McMurray.
Present.
Al Pond.
Present.
Rita Scott.
Present.
Rita. Christopher Tomlinson,
Present.
Thomas Worthy,
Present.
Mr. Chair, we have 11 board members present.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Peters. First item is approval of the July 30th, 2020 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. May I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Frida Hartage, I move.
And second, Jim Durrett.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Do we have any abstentions to the meeting minutes? Any objections to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. The second item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in the contractual authorization for the Outsystems software, RFP P42834. Kirk Calvin. AMG, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Parker, Mr. Hurley, and members of the committee. This morning, I'd like to request a modification to an existing contract we have with a software provider named Outsystems. The nature of the product they supply is a platform that allows us to create mobile apps and web applications quickly and with little need to do customized programming. We've had this product in-house for 2 years, and we're requesting an extension based on the success of the product for 1 additional base year with 2 optional years. The total amount of the extension would be $354,000. You can see here the base term and the optional year terms. This application or this software has been used to develop mobile applications that MARTA employees utilize, primarily internally, but we plan to expand the usage of this externally. We've developed a mobile app which allowed us to coordinate and communicate with our MARTA ambassadors during the Super Bowl. We've extended that for a number of events afterwards. We're in the process of using this platform to develop lost and found application, which will be rider-facing, a time and attendance application for operations, construction resource scheduling application, a reduced fare application, and a number of other applications that we see. This complements the software that we typically purchase from larger vendors like Cubic or Oracle by allowing us to create micro applications that we can deploy quickly for the agency. If there are any questions, I would be glad to entertain them at this time.
Kurt, this is Roberta. Can this software be used to properly launch the application for mobility services?
Potentially, yes. What this does is if we can get the requirements and we can define how we want it to work, we can develop an app that we can push out either to the operators or to the public, depending on the utilization. But yes, definitely, we could use it for that purpose.
Thank you.
I'll move approval. Jim?
Okay.
Second, this is Robbie.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Are there any objections to the resolution presented by Mr. Talbert? Are there any abstentions? And hearing none, the resolution passes. The third item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the validation of sales tax revenue bonds in an aggregate not to exceed 800 million and incorporating the City of Atlanta's half a cent penny in one or more series. Kevin Hurley, Interim Chief Financial Officer, you have the floor. Mr. Hurley.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Frierson, members of the Business Management Committee, and Mr. Parker. As Mr. Frierson said, I'm presenting the resolution to authorize the validation of sales tax revenue bonds. This resolution previously was briefed to you at the August board work session, and it authorizes staff in conjunction with our bond counsel and disclosure counsel to execute the actions necessary to validate an additional $800 million of bonds to be issued with further board approval in one or more series in the future. In addition, the resolution confirms the pledge of the City of Atlanta additional half penny to support the bondholders. MARTA requires the issuance of sales tax revenue bonds for certain expenditures supporting the capital improvement program and the expansion program. In addition, MARTA may choose to restructure or refund existing debt series, which also requires bond validation. The validation efforts, as stipulated in the MARTA Act, require approval of the attorneys for Fulton, DeKalb, and Clayton counties, as well as the City of Atlanta. Since timeliness is important in pricing and executing bond transactions, and gaining validation approvals can be time-consuming, MARTA pre-validates bonds in order to ensure that this program can be executed in a timely fashion. The validation of bonds for an additional $800 million will ensure that MARTA maintains the flexibility to manage its debt program in a manner that takes advantage of ever-changing market conditions for the next 3 to 5 years. Additionally, the cost of legal services and advisory fees related to this action will be charged to the financial planning project in the approved FY21 capital budget. At this time, I respectfully request approval of this resolution.
Move approval.
Then moved by Mr. Durrett.
Second,
Second.
second, Elton.
Second by Mr. Alton.
This
Questions?
is Robbie Ash. I have a couple questions for Mr. Hurley, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Ash.
Kevin, help me understand, and maybe I just missed the piece of what you said that helped. I mean, is this to take the city's half penny and pledge it as security for MARTA's overall debt? Or is this about bonding against the half penny so as to accelerate program delivery for the more MARTA project?
Actually,
or is
Mr.
it something else?
No, sir. It actually does both of those. The pledge is for the overall bonding capacity of MARTA, but without doing this, we cannot bond on the City of Atlanta's behalf either, because it's all rolled into one particular indenture.
Is there a current plan to bond against the half penny so as to accelerate that program delivery? Because if so, that's news to me.
No, we have the funds set aside in the City of Atlanta reserve, and we have not bonded. The only time we will bond against those funds is when we start moving those projects forward in a implementation, when we're investing in capital assets related to the City of Atlanta expansions.
Okay, so this isn't necessary right now in order to do anything for more MARTA. It's a pre-authorization, but probably won't be used for some time to come. Is that a correct understanding of what we're doing?
It depends on how Frank has everything programmed in the capital program. You know, as Frank rolls out that capital program, and the City of Atlanta projects are incorporated, we will start utilizing bonds to support it. That way we can deliver it a little bit more quickly.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out, is that something that's going to happen in the next month? I don't think so. Is that something that's going to happen in the next year or two? Or, because in the meantime, what we're doing is putting Atlanta's portion of this kind of the uniquely Atlanta portion to service on behalf of the debt of the entire system. And that's fine. I'm not objecting to doing that. I'm just trying to figure out what's the benefit to the more MARTA program from this. And it sounds like there's not one now, but there will be maybe at some point in the future.
Yes, if you're specifically pointing at the more MARTA project, what it does for MARTA is obviously it increases the amount of funds being pledged, so it enhances our coverage ratios, which strengthens the credit. But certainly when we start bonding is where the city of Atlanta will start experiencing the value in it.
Bingo.
Kevin,
this
is
Jeff.
Roberta. Didn't do the same thing for Clayton County's half penny about 4 years ago?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. This would put the city of Atlanta in the same position as Clayton County.
So Kevin, isn't it true that, well, first of all, that to answer Robbie's question, the first planned use of bond monies for the more MARTA City of Atlanta program would be for Summer Hill BRT when we move into the construction of that. And then because we're pledging everything together, we would be getting the same, we would be using the same credit rating that we have for the overall program, as opposed to having to get a separate credit rating just for the half cent within the City of Atlanta. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And that actually helps strengthen the bonds that we're going to sell to support the City of Atlanta projects in a manner that would not be capable under its own sales tax.
Right. So we wouldn't have as much bond capacity for that half cent if we had done it separate, because of the bond rating and the coverage ratios would be separate. That fair?
Sir. Yes, sir. We would not have the coverage ratios that we would have as a whole, which is what provides the strength of the credit. If we were to bond separately for the City of Atlanta, instead of having 3 to 4 times coverage, we would have more than likely, 2 to 2.5, somewhere in a lower range, and we wouldn't enjoy the credit ratings we have currently.
Right.
Can I request an update from staff before our next board meeting on what I realize they're projections to some degree, but the anticipated uses of the anticipated instances in which we're going to bond against the half penny for acceleration of the more MARTA project?
Yes, we'll get Kevin and Frank to pull that together.
Thank you very much.
Provide you a briefing.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Chairman, I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nash. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Chris Tomlinson. Quick question for Kevin. I apologize, I didn't get a chance to read the entire resolution. Is there a not to exceed interest rate for this validation?
No, sir. How this functions is this gives us a cap on what we can go out to the market to execute, but then the board will approve the individual transactions. So those interest rates will be defined at the time we price, and the board can review those at that time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board member? Okay, this motion has been properly moved in second. Do I hear any objections to the resolution?
Hang up or press pound for more options.
Any abstentions to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution passed. Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Opportunity for us to use some leverage in order to help MARTA and also move forward in our capital projects that we have planned. So thank you. Are there any other questions from the board member? So hearing none, I consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Everyone have a good day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.